Good evening. Welcome to the July 24th, 2023 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Grafton Planning Board is being conducted with both in-person and remote participation by board members and members of the public. Remote participation by the public for the public comment agenda item and public hearings and any other matter for which the board allows public participation will be via the Zoom raise hand feature. If you raise your hand on Zoom, you will be enabled at an appropriate point to enter the meeting via voice or video to make a comment or ask a question. In all cases, whether in person or remote, please identify yourself by name and address for the record. Every vote will be taken by roll call. Please note this meeting is being recorded as well as being broadcast live on the Grafton Community Television Government Channel. Now we need to do a check for everybody at the meeting, and can we hear and can they hear us?
All right. Mr. Robbins.
Mr. Robbins is present.
Mr. Davis.
Present.
I am present. Mr. Veckatraman.
Present.
And Mr. Hassinger.
And I'm here.
And staff present is Miss Coughlin.
Here.
And Miss Alward.
Present.
Wonderful.
Okay, I'll note, in case anybody's watching out there and is planning to hustle down here for the in-person meeting, the parking lot's a little confusing. They've got it all blocked off, but you can come in and you'll see the northwest corner, the corner close to the conference room. The door is open to be able to come in here. Just in case anybody's rushing down here. Okay, anything else before we proceed? Yeah, there will be people. Okay, first item on the agenda is public input. This is for anyone who wants to speak to us about something within our purview which is not on the agenda tonight. Is there anything? I don't see anything. Moving on, proposed zoning change, 40R, 40R district with Mark.
So this is basically a discussion follow-up from the select board meeting the other night regarding the proposed subzone B. We did at the time of the select board meeting, the vote was passed to submit the application to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which includes some draft zoning as well as design guidelines and a couple of additional information, the application page, as well as the district spreadsheet breakdown, which is included in the meeting materials. I did submit that, but Mr. Bobrowski is here on behalf of the Claremont companies. He will be speaking to the logistics, but tonight is really to kind of talk through the board's thoughts, recommendations of the zoning specifically. I mean, obviously we can talk through additional things, but we have Mr. Bobrowski for a short period of time here, and this is a pertinent and very, very important conversation that we should be having now. Mr. Bobrowski has offered to come back at a later meeting date if necessary to talk through any additional concerns, but I think for purposes of tonight, we should focus more on the zoning and any kind of glaring concerns and how we can work through that. And with that, I will turn it over to Mark.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. I'm away on vacation. This is my first full day, so I plan to be really brief. What I'd like to do is invite you to take a look at the zoning and, in fact, the entire 40R application, but primarily the zoning. As you may know, the zoning is a template that DHCD has put in online I can only make track changes to it. And then that's the way they review it. They see what I've added or subtracted, mostly added. I believe Fiona has a copy of that, and she can readily provide that to you. I don't know how many of you have looked at it and, studied it in detail. My thought as of last week was that that was not the case, that perhaps some of you had and some of you had not. And so Fiona and I agreed that I would come tonight primarily to let you know that I think there's still ample time to make changes, but because it's just gone into the state. For all I know, the state program director's on vacation this week. But certainly we have reserved time on the 14th of August, which I believe is one of your scheduled meetings. And I am on the agenda at 7 o'clock that evening. And I will come with Bill Rail, who is the Director of Development for the Claremont Companies, spend as much time with you as you like to answer any questions, take your suggestions, make changes if warranted, and get those immediately into DHCD so that they can be part of the final product that comes back for public hearing.
Should I share my screen? Share the application on my screen would be easier.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to scroll through the whole thing and understand it.
No, I think that we'll focus on the zoning this evening, and that'll be the kind of main discussion point. Bear with me, it's a 72 pager, so we'll get.
Well, while Fiona's getting it up, let me point out that I would say roughly 60 to 70% of the zoning is unchangeable. It is the affordable housing component of the bylaw. It's virtually non-negotiable, and it's been that way for 15, 20 years now.
Yep.
I didn't make any changes to what DHCD wants to see there. The key things that are negotiable are obviously the district map, the dimensional requirements or in the district, the design standards in the district, the uses available within the sub-district. This sub-district is a one-trick pony. It's multifamily only. There is no mixed use, unlike sub-district A, which is around the old state hospital, where the board long ago elected to allow for mixed uses. We're at the MBTA station here. So Claremont has proposed to do a straight multifamily 233 unit proposal here. Buildings are 5 stories high, and the buildings are kind of in a reverse L shape. I can show you the PowerPoint when we meet again on the 14th.
Yeah, we'll probably want to take the time. I've looked through this pretty thoroughly, as I think Fiona and Mark both are aware, because we discussed it a bit at the select board meeting last week. And basically, for the benefit of the board who may be less familiar with this is the existing 40R district around 8 Pine Street, for which the board has previously processed a project approval. And we're adding the property that is currently known roughly as 5 Millennium Drive, although the boundaries of that are being proposed to change slightly. But basically it's going to adopt most of the characteristics, the rules and regulations from the existing 40R. As Mark noted, this subzone B, which is the new part, subzone A is what we already have. Subzone B was basically tailored specifically for this proposed project in terms of the allowable uses, the unit counts and unit densities and so on. So kind of look at it with that eye. The proposed language here for section 13 of the zoning bylaw, it's, when you look at it, you see a lot of markup, a lot of change, change tracking in there. Most of that predates this current proposal. It came out of what was once known as DHCD, basically as a follow-up to their approval of our original zoning. The language they recommended never made it back here to be incorporated into the zoning bylaw. So now it's here. So much of what you'll see is not specific to the new subzone A.
Yeah, when Bill Rail and I agreed on which document to track change, DHCD, now EOHLC, had made the track changes in anticipation of my call, and they basically corrected what was undone 5 years ago. So anything you see in, I believe it's blue, is Bill's changes from Boston. What you see in red is my track changes.
Yep. Yeah, and the changes specifically for this project are relatively modest in nature.
And if it would make reading this easier, I'd be more than happy to prepare a clean version of this by accepting the changes in the track change version and sending it to the board members through Fiona, so that you can have an unencumbered read of it. I think that's often useful, but I have to submit the track change version to the state.
And I liked reading the track change because it was interesting to me to see what DHCD had suggested as changes to the original zoning, and it's mostly, to me, I didn't have any problem with pretty much any of it. It was better wording or clarifying some things. I think there were a couple of questions in there that he had sort of left open. It was either in the zoning or the design standards. I forget which. There were a couple of things that we probably would want to weigh in on.
Yeah, I think it was mostly in the design standards, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we have a couple of things swirling around, a couple of different projects swirling around us, and another one has a height issue that came up when we talked about it. They asked about 50 feet. I think we had a rule about 50 feet, at least in that district, and they had adjusted their building to be 4 stories, and make the 50 feet. Is that an issue here? Does that limitation apply? Because if you said 5 stories.
If you can scroll down a little bit, whoever is controlling the document, you'll see the height limitation coming up.
All right. It doesn't help from the distance I am.
Sorry, I know it's.
Let me go on my version here on my laptop. Hang on.
Why don't you just tell me?
Yeah, I would want you to have that discussion with Bill. Right, I'm sorry, Bill Lovett, who was the Claremont representative. I don't feel comfortable speaking for him on that point.
Well, the proposed, I would hope you would know how tall the proposed building is.
Yeah, I do. It's in here. I'm trying to dig it out.
All right, well, okay.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, would you get a chance?
Yes.
So one thing I just wanted to call out, Mr. Bobrowski, is, first off, I did watch the entire meeting from last week, so I'm not expecting to get into the weeds on this point, and I know that there is no ability for us to require more than 20% for affordable, but if there is something that we can allow for in the zoning language that can give us the ability to give you an incentive to do up to 25%, like if we can increase the density by the board approving a higher density to allow where 25% could be feasible for you or the developer, so to speak. That's something that I would be interested in making sure is available to us if possible.
Yeah.
Yes, I heard that loud and clear last week. I'll be prepared to talk about that on the 14th.
Wonderful.
Essentially, what I understand from my contacts at EOHLC is that 20% is the maximum unless there can be some sort of demonstration that 25% would not stifle the project. And you may recall that this project originally was put forward as a 40B, whether mass housing, PEL, or a LIP at 25%. That proved difficult for Claremont.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we begin that discussion.
Yep.
We can do 20%, no questions asked,
Yep.
but we've already looked at 25%. And this is a very difficult economic time in which to make 5% more affordability.
My main point is, I think the 40R language we do to the state, has to say 20%. That's, my understanding is non-negotiable on that point. But if there is, some discretionary aspects that the planning board can, make on our end to say that if you're going to give us 25%, we can give you this, other thing would be good.
The thing that I think about is, if I'm not mistaken, this is a zoning change that we go through the whole routine at town meeting.
Yes,
I don't know, most zoning is still 2/3 vote.
This one
this
would
is,
be,
this is 50% plus one.
Majority. It's still a town meeting vote, and, so you're gonna look at a balance. We know we have some objection to this, on the basis of, it's gonna upset the property owner. And he may raise objections, and, each of us is gonna have to decide how much support we can give. I was here for Centec Park. I went all through the getting Centec Park built, and the town's purpose was very much to get some non-residential land that could be developed. Here, we lose that lot, and that opportunity.
I will certainly alert Bill Lovett to your concerns, and we'll be more than ready to give you an economic response to
Yeah.
that.
But, it may come down to the economics. We may not be able to support, even though they have good reason for not wanting to, or maybe even being able to do the 25. The whole point is that the most important thing, I think, for me, is getting safe harbor and being well into safe harbor as much as possible. And that would be a big selling point for me, and I think at town meeting, knowing how people feel about all of this. So, I think,
Now, I have to say, in all the 40 Rs I've done, and I probably have done somewhere between 12 and 15, I have a memory problem, but every one of them was 25%. They were all rental projects. But this is linked to the MBTA, and that cuts in a different direction. So we'll be prepared to talk about that, Mr. Chairman. There was a question about the building height. If you look at section 13.10.A, there is a building height maximum of 5 stories and buildings not higher than 75 feet. That's the current provision in the draft bylaw.
and that's also the way it is in the current zoning in the 40R.
in the 40R,
Yeah.
we did something about building height down at the other end of Centec quite some years ago, so that the fiber optic
That way,
company.
right, that was, we did that in the OLI zoning.
Yeah.
I remember doing that.
Anyway,
One other point I would like to make with respect to this is it hadn't occurred to me when we were discussing this with the select board last week, but this use of this particular lot is completely consistent with the recommendations of the North Grafton Transit Village Strategic Plan from 2017. It identified specifically this lot. Let me just real briefly here put that on the screen.
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. All right. So this is what we had identified in that plan 6 years ago. And right here, the mixed-use village center includes the 8 Pine Street to the right of Pine Street here, and it includes this lot, 5 Millennium Drive, right in here. So this is very much consistent with the strategic plan that we made 6 years ago for this area.
And I'd just like to add something. You know, when there was a push for, you know, promoting and marketing Centec Park a while ago, and you know, since that push, there hasn't been a lot of industrial development in the area, as the board knows. So, you know, we have a great project here that's providing much needed housing for the town in an area that's ideal with a good developer. So, you know, and that it really meets the requirements of MBTA and 40R. So we you know, it's a good project in our opinion, but yes, and it also aligns with the visions of the area. But at the time, you know, when there was a huge marketing push back in the day for industrial uses, I think that there's only one tenant right now in Centec Park. Primary Colors,
No, there's a
I believe.
couple IDEXs there.
Oh, yes, okay.
How about the fiber optic people? They're very quiet and they're down back, and the building on their side coming out has been 2 or 3 different tenants. Oh, that's that's whatever the name.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, you're thinking of.
Marijuana.
Yes, yeah, you're thinking of
MJ's Market is
the
there.
other. Yeah, the other road. But yeah. So that's, you know, we've been trying to spur development here. My point being is that, you know, we've been trying to see something done for a while, and obviously this predates me. But you know, we think that this would be an advantageous project to the town. So
So, in the interest of time and Mr. Bobrovsky's, you know, vacation, are we satisfied with this topic enough tonight, given that he's coming back on the 14th to talk with us further? Or do we want to keep talking and still let Mr. Bobrovsky go for now, or, you know, how do I do this?
I think that
I would invite you just to fold in this to the conversation, that if any of you want to make direct contact with me and Bill Lovett, the Development Director for Claremont, before the 14th, please send an email via Fiona, and we'll be well prepared to answer any and all questions that way instead of having them come up that night. So I invite you to do that. I think it'll make for a better meeting.
Yeah, I think, does anybody have any other, you know, topics that they want?
My only comment would just be, it would be nice to know if there was a cutoff in terms of, as you mentioned, changes to the application, if there was an official cutoff there, to find out if there's any deadlines that we would have to make changes by.
I've negotiated with Bill Rail, you know, pretty much all throughout the 90-day period that he reserves for his review. So, I mean, I think it's 85% unchangeable, and maybe the 15% can change. And Bill usually responds favorably to suggestions as we move through the process. He doesn't expect it to come in absolutely clean.
Well, okay.
alrighty.
My point is the 25%. And you already knew that.
Well, I think that'll probably be the first thing then that we talk about on the 14th.
Got it, but you can tell them that you got people who are concerned about it. Not that it's a secret. Okay,
No, we understand.
okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Enjoy the rest.
I'm in charge. I'm in charge of cooking on this vacation night, so I appreciate you letting me off in 30 minutes here.
Good,
Thanks,
okay.
Mark.
Thank you. I'll see you in 3 weeks.
See you.
Can we do 1A in 5 minutes?
Yep.
Why don't we do 1A? Approval, 2 and 4 Old Upton. NANR.
Sure. So, I'm just going to do a brief intro. I have way too many papers here, sorry. So this A&R application was, it might be familiar to the board because Mr. Dauphiné, who's here this evening, was before us not too long ago, back in April. At the time that application was originally submitted on the 20th of April, and he appeared before the board on the 24th. At the time, the surveyor extended parcel A to the street line, which ultimately caused issues with the frontage. The frontage was not the required 140 feet was not maintained within the front yard setback, creating issues with making it a legal buildable lot. So that needed to be fixed. Also at the time, there was lack of proper description of lot 1 and ownership of lot 1. It wasn't originally provided, and so now he's coming back, submitting a plan with all the proper notations so that he can create a legally buildable lot and go from there. So but because of the issues, at the time, obviously the surveyor had there was an oversight on that on his part, but also there was an oversight on mine because I did not properly check up for lot 1 because I did not realize that I had to at the time. So in light of that, the applicant is requesting a waiver from the application fee for the board's consideration. The applicant now is asking the board to basically he's dividing the parcel A from the original submission into parcels A1 and A2. Both will not be considered buildable lots. Parcel A1, which I'll show on the screen in a moment, is to be conveyed to lot 1 to rectify the frontage issue, and parcel A2 is to be retained by the owners of 4 Old Upton Road, the Trahans. And so I will show that now so you can see what I am talking about. One second, sorry. Okay. And Craig is here, so I'm if the board has any questions for Craig, or Craig, if you'd like to chime in, feel free.
Okay, thanks, Fiona.
So, are these, if I may, I think the A&R itself is pretty straightforward, and that, that piece in of itself is, I think going to be their easiest part. I guess my biggest question is on the fee waiver, that my, comprehension of what the memo said was that it was a mistake on his surveyor and his end, in which case I lean toward not saying we would waive the fee. But my question is, kind of how does staff usually handle this? Like if you had seen that in the first place, would that have just in a typical A&R situation, if you had do you always look at that stuff? If it's missing, do they still only submit one fee and then they just and fix that, or how does that process usually work on the staff side for that?
Right, and Natalia might be able to chime in on how it's been done historically, but at the time, we looked at, based on the description on the site plan and in the application, we analyzed what he owed at the time. Because lot 1 wasn't really discussed in detail, we really didn't focus on it. So now, we basically have to he has to come back. But Natalia, I don't know if you've had an experience like this before, if you want to weigh in, but my suggestion was basically, come back to the board and request it if you'd like, but it's up to the board in terms of what's been historically done.
When our people can, staff can see something and lend a hand, that's great. But there's no obligation. Our obligation is to see if it meets the A&R law, and it met the A&R law. They asked for an A&R. They got an A&R. But anyway, let's decide about the A&R, then we can decide about the fee.
Right.
Maybe Craig wants to try to persuade us here.
If we want to dispense with the A&R itself, I'll move that we find approval is not required and direct staff to do the appropriate documentation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Veckatraman.
Aye.
And Mr. Hassinger.
And I vote aye. Okay. Now, Craig, do you want to?
Sure.
Sure.
And I won't take. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak. All I will say is, when I originally came in for the A&R approval, we talked about, what we would do on the property. There was about 8.5 acres there, and we were breaking up the backland, some going to my sister on one side of the river, some going to me and Carol on the other side of the river, and then the frontage lots being broke up, so that we could, so that they would be buildable lots. So that was all part of the conversation. So the back parcels are going to individuals, and then lot 1 and lot 3, which is right on the other side of Bruce's Brook on the Bruce Street side, are staying in, currently staying with the same ownership that it has for the last 20 plus years. But the whole purpose of breaking up the back pieces and creating, the back lot line on lot 1 and lot 3 was to make them buildable lots and meet the zoning requirements, which we thought we did. So the surveyor made a mistake and didn't keep that 30-foot setback requirement on the frontage. And it's all about this tree. I don't know if you remember that conversation. There was a tree that was planted in as a memorial for a friend. And so we wanted to keep that tree with house number 4, my sister and Laurie and Roger's house. So when he just angled that lot line back instead of coming in 30 feet and then angling it, that's what's caused the problem. So that being said, I guess if you guys had caught it that night, I didn't, I didn't remember from my planning board days, Bob, it was like 30 years ago. So if you guys had caught it that night, I think it would have been a continuance and we would have had it fixed and come back under the same application. So I had to fill out new application, new certificate of good standing, new affidavit, basically had to go through the entire exercise for 30 feet by about, 2 feet by the road, because it's a very narrow sliver. So I'll leave it up to the board to decide whether they want to waive the fee or not. And thanks for the opportunity.
Anything else? Oh, Natalia?
I was just going to mention, part of the problem was also that there wasn't an accurate description, and that's what flagged it with the building department was lot number 1 did not have a description, so it couldn't be sold. So the engineer had not put on those measurements. So I think that was the other problem, not just the pitch. Does that make sense?
Anybody else?
What's the fee amount?
Hmm?
The amount?
Well, do we waive the fee or don't we?
And how much was?
$100.
Yep, it's 100.
I really think your engineer ought to be paying that.
I don't recall us waiving a fee under similar circumstances in the past.
Okay, well, time to have a motion unless there's discussion.
Sounds like the rest of the board is leaning toward no, so I'll move that we do not waive the fee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? No. Roll call.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mrs. Davis,
I have no issue with waiving the fee, so I'll vote nay.
I didn't hear what you said.
I vote nay. Yeah, I don't have an issue with the waiving.
I'll vote aye. Mr. Venkataraman,
Nay. I have no issue waiving it.
it's up to you. Mr. Hassiter.
No, it's decided nay. Motion, no, the motion was to
Deny, not waive the
not
fee.
waive the fee, and
So, I vote means we do not waive the fee. A nay vote means we waive the fee. Or
Fee,
Yeah.
aye or nay?
Right.
yes,
so, did everybody say okay to waive the fee?
It's 2 and 2.
It's two
It's
and
2
two.
and 2 right now. Yep.
No, sorry.
You're voting to not waive the fee?
I'm voting to not waive the fee.
That would be an aye vote on the motion.
Thank you. Oh, my head.
Okay.
Sorry, Craig. Okay, Moving on.
Moving on.
Public meetings and hearings. Request for special permit and site plan, One Meadow Lane. Let's see, is this new?
All of them
This
are new
is
tonight.
new.
All of them are. Go for it.
Pursuant to sections 1.5.7 and 1.3.3 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, July 24th, 2023, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider an application for a special permit and site plan approval request for an accessory apartment located at 1 Meadow Lane, shown as Grafton Assessor's Map 45, Lot 10. Said property is located in a medium-density residential R20 zoning district. The applicants are Lauren and Kathy Pardee, and the owner is Kathy Pardee. I apologize if I mispronounced that. A copy of the application plan is available for public inspection at the planning department during regular business hours or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the planning department development projects webpage.
Okay.
So the applicant, which I see Lauren is here, I will just do a brief intro and then I'll hand it over to you, Lauren. So basically the applicant is applying for an accessory apartment in the basement of her mother's home. She's going to be converting the basement, which and it will include a bedroom, living room, kitchenette, and storage room. There's an approximately 8-foot garage door that's to be converted into a glass door with side light windows, which will also serve as a second means of egress. The applicant has been living at home with her mother since the pandemic and does keep a vehicle at the property, and that would not change in this case. The applicant is requesting waivers from all of the requirements in section 1.3.3.3 of the bylaw, as well as section 8.2. From the planning department's review, there was not a site plan submitted as part of this application, but there was a building floor plan that was submitted, and I was actually able to uncover several subdivision plan sets and street, one subdivision plan set and several street profile and drainage layout plans that I had attached to the meeting materials. So, the board can had the opportunity to review those, but in terms of a site plan, that was what I found. But Lauren, I will let you explain a little bit more as well, unless you think that I covered it all.
I think you mostly covered it. I'm looking to do an in-law type of apartment. I think it's now called an accessory apartment, though. Do you have any questions that I could answer?
I suspect that you've been made aware that our custom is to approve for family people only, not random third party.
Yes, the apartment is for myself.
Yeah.
And I was made aware that if we were to sell the house, or if we were, somewhere along the line, down the line, if the house was to become mine, then I would remove the kitchen, I think is what I had been told by the building inspector, that I would need to remove the kitchen.
Yeah. Or get a new permit if you had still had a use that fits within whatever the rules are when you get there. You'd need to do something about permitting, because this runs with the owner, not the property, as a rule.
Right.
And you're okay about that?
I am.
Okay. Anybody?
Yeah, there's no plans to use it as anything other than my personal space.
Right. I was interested in the materials. I recognized the plan for the McGill development, but I don't know when I had ever seen the earlier plan for just the original Meadow Lane, and the way things were done even before me.
Right.
40-foot roadway, quarter acre lots. Of course, that was before modern zoning.
Right, the 60s.
Okay, does anybody have anything to say about this?
No questions?
It seemed like everything I might have even thought to ask was already in the application package, so this was a good setup.
Pretty well done,
Thank you.
making a nice case. If,
I think unless there is any input from the public,
well, I've looked and I don't see any.
no? We're not seeing any hands raised on Zoom, so on the assumption that there's no further input from the public or the board, I will move that the board close the public hearing and direct staff to draft a decision based upon all the information submitted and the testimony received during the public hearing.
Second,
Moved in second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
I vote aye, and Mr. Hassinger.
Aye. Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you, Lauren.
We'll take up the decision at our next meeting, and we'll go from there.
Yes.
I'm sorry, just so I understand, you'll decide next meeting?
We typically only vote on an approval or denial until we have the actual draft decision in front of us, so we have the wording of what the decision would be. And at that point,
Okay.
that'll be our next meeting, and we'll vote then. But I think,
Okay.
given our past history and the questions you received tonight, I think I don't think you have anything to worry about. But
Okay, I understand.
Safe to assume it will likely be approved, and we'll formally do that at the next meeting.
All right.
You'll like
Thank you
seeing
very
the,
much.
you like seeing the 5 or 10 page decision that it takes. But some of
Thank you
it's,
for your time.
Thank you.
thank you.
some of it's copy and paste. Okay, that brings us to Follette Street.
Pursuant to sections 1.5.7, 1.3.3, and 5.8 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, July 24th, 2023, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider the application for a special permit and site plan review to request to construct a wireless communication facility on property located at 58 Follette Street, shown as Grafton Assessors Map 104, Lot 7. Said property is located in a low-density residential R40 water supply protection overlay zoning district. Selco Partnerships, doing business as Verizon Wireless, is the applicant, and Sutton LLC is the owner. A copy of the application plan is available for public inspection at the planning department during regular business hours or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the planning department development projects webpage.
Okay, so we're restarting the process
Thank you.
now that we have 5 members. Unfortunately, we didn't get an associate, so we're still a little short of resources, although we haven't been having any problem with who we've got making meetings. I wanted, we sort of, we got to where you folks withdrew because we were down too many members to really, the chances of getting a favorable decision were not real good, so you decided to come back and start fresh with us. I will note that there were essentially promises made to people who have had concerns or objections, for the most part, who submitted them to the previous hearing process. And I noticed that if you go to the page for this application on the town website, you'll find a link to all that material. And it would be, I'm sure that we sort of promised that whoever came in new would, make themselves aware of all that.
Yep.
Okay, let's see, is David with us tonight?
He is not joining
He's-
this evening. He'll
Good.
said he's joined future meetings, but he did not think that tonight would. He wanted to basically hear the applicant's testimony, and then we'll provide a response.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, then, do you wanna tell us anything?
Sure, absolutely. I'll do a brief intro and then I'll turn it over. So as the board knows, and as Bob just mentioned, this is a resubmission of a wireless facility special permit application. The applicant originally, submitted this application rather on June 27th for this meeting this evening. Most of the application materials are the same as the original submission, including the stormwater report, the radio frequency materials, and the radio frequency report, rather, the photo simulations, the revised site plans from January 17th, 2023 and March 13th, 2023. The waiver request form is the same, and the statement of support of the special permit and site plan approval application. Updated materials include obviously the application forms, the butters list, etc. A notification letter to the town clerk, obviously new fee payments, a description of proposed use pursuant to the Grafton zoning bylaw, section 1.3.3.3C, and a description of proposed use pursuant to the bylaw, section 1.3.3.3D. The applicant received their order of conditions from the Conservation Commission at their meeting on July 11th, 2023 to authorize the driveway's wetland crossing and to replicate 1,800 square feet of wetland on the site. Some staff comments that I wanted to highlight that I also put in my memo is from the fire department, ensuring proper contact information is listed in case of an emergency, adequate space for fire apparatus is provided, ensuring the path for the fire apparatus is maintained, and ensuring that the propane permit is pulled upon installation. I had a couple of comments that I'm hoping the applicant will address this evening. There, at this time, there's been no peer review from Isotrope LLC. As we mentioned, Dave Maxim is not joining us this evening. Grave Engineering has also not been able to provide a response as of the date of my original memo. So I just want that to bear that in mind. The board, that's pending. The application will require a new balloon test. The prior test was based on a 170-foot height. The tower is now proposed at 155 feet. So this will cause, will require revised photo simulation analyses at the proper height. In the new application, gotta get the new materials. The applicant or their engineer should be prepared to just explain the earthworks calculations. That was just something that I requested just so I have a understanding, and I'm sure the board will appreciate that as well. Something to note, the radio frequency report speaks to the 170-foot height and not the 155-foot height. So maybe we can speak to that this evening. And the applicant did call me today about this, and there is discussions in other parts of the narrative it's submitted, but there was not a clearly labeled site justification or appropriateness statement in the application package. But again, they do speak to this in the narrative that they provide. The other information is in my memo, and I won't take up too much more time, but I will just add that in addition to the 155-foot wireless communications facility, there's additional equipment involved similar to the last time. The associated radio and power equipment, including a gas-powered propane generator in a 500-gallon tank mounted on an 11 by 17-foot concrete pad. Associated equipment include 12 panel antennas mounted on the tower, remote radio heads, junction boxes, surge suppressors mounted alongside the antennas, a 6-foot lightning rod extending above the top of the tower, protective canopy for the telecommunication cabinets, a backup generator and utility connections, an ice bridge from the cabinets to the monopole to protect the cabling, and the cable entry port near the base of the monopole. And the site will be enclosed in a 40 by 60 foot fenced compound with a 1,483 foot long access drive leading to the facility. Utilities will be underground, and maintenance will include occasional site visits by a technician and to refill the propane tank. The facility will be open 24 hours a day. And with that, I will stop droning on and hand you over to the applicant.
Thank you. Michael Jaimo, representing Verizon Wireless. We missed you guys.
I'm sure.
We're glad to be back. Thank you for the consideration in letting us withdraw and refile. This is the same project that was before you in April, same height, same everything. We had a 155-foot tower as your planner noted, down from 170 when we originally came in here. We don't have an objection to doing another balloon test. I mean, I think given the controversy, I guess, over the photo sims, I think it might be helpful for everybody to have a new balloon test. If Tim Green is on the Zoom call, I know he's been in contact with someone about that, and we were hoping to try to set up a schedule. I don't know if we'll be able to do that tonight or if we'll have to arrange it through planning staff, but that's not objectionable at all. I do have we do have our civil engineer here tonight, Jess Moreno, to speak about the earthworks calculations. Sohail is here about the RF report. The RF filing does include information about the 155-foot tower. It wasn't in the original report we filed at the time. We proposed the 170, but when we reduced the height to 155, we did present maps with that information, and it is in our current filing, as well as some other alternative heights and alternative sites that were looked at that time. And the site justification, there was a memo submitted for the prior hearing, which is Exhibit 24 on the filing, and we would, in addition to, as Mr. Hassinger said, the abutter comments becoming part of this record, we would also reference what was submitted before as part of the record also, in case something didn't get replicated in the filing we did in May. And I think that was something the board had indicated was acceptable. And we're happy to, provide you with new copies of things if that makes it easier for you. Just tell us what it is you need. I don't know what the best way to approach this is today, because you've heard an awful lot about this project, but the purpose of this facility is to fill a coverage gap in Grafton and nearby areas of Sutton with a tower that has the minimum height that would work for Verizon's means, but also to try to, by putting it in a wooded area, well set back from all the property lines, to try to make it as visually unobtrusive as possible, particularly from Grafton properties. And the balloon test will show that when that's conducted. The access driveway is designed to comply with the Conservation Commission's approvals. There's some replicated wetlands at the beginning of it. There are a couple of stormwater features along the way up there, but it's a minimal width driveway which will accommodate the fire equipment and the technicians' trucks, but it's not intended to be a permanent road or anything like that. It's just a driveway. I can walk through the application if you want me to, but I don't know if you want me to.
Just making a point that Mr. Green is on.
Great.
So if
Okay.
he wants to speak, Dave, if you could promote him to a panelist.
Yeah, we can make Tim Green a panelist here.
And if you want me to share my screen of anything in particular, just let me know. I have the page open right now, but I'm not sure
Okay.
if there's anything you want me to pull up.
So, real quick, very simple question that I heard you allude to, which I don't think I caught anywhere else before, is do you have an approval for at least the roadway from conservation already?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, there was a wetland crossing at the bottom of the hill,
Yes.
and that was all approved. I think there was a new drainage pipe involved because there were some discrepancies with what had been put there previously by an abutter or something. And so that was all worked out and they approved it at our, I think it was what, 2 weeks ago, Jesse?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
One point that I would like to make before we continue is myself and town council will be meeting with the property owner, Mr. Bruce, this week
Good.
regarding this and the chapter land issue. So we'll have more clarity that by the next meeting, but right now it's just a preliminary meeting. So information is forthcoming. I just want the board to be aware of that. Apologies for not
Yeah, that-
leading with that.
We got at least one comment from an interested person that's in the new record, which reminded us of that issue and two or three others that are quite bothersome. You know, status of the land, and
Yeah.
should be protected, isn't protected. Maybe it is protected. Chapter land, who knows?
Well, I'll be interested in hearing about your meeting, but my understanding from discussions with the landlord previously is the assessor was notified in 2022 that the area for the tower and the road going up to the tower were being withdrawn from Chapter 61. That's not a discretionary issue on the part of the Board of Assessors. If the owner says we're withdrawing that land from the tax preference, it gets withdrawn from the tax preference. The owner also filed with the state a revised forestry management plan that indicated that area that was coming out. So that covers the area that would be disturbed by this facility. There's also a condition on the Sutton approval that requires this land to be put into either a conservation restriction or deeded over to a land trust, and the landowner knows that and insists that that is something he's going to comply with. And
How can he do that when you're putting a tower on it?
because that condition exempts the tower. The Sutton Planning Board approved a modification of this original special permit authorizing.
But the chapter land, we're not gonna solve this tonight. The
Understood.
chapter
I just want to
land-
make sure the facts
The
are clear.
chapter land is getting tax benefits from the town of Grafton, and the town of Grafton has entitlement as a result, I think. So that's the, I know I don't know enough,
Yeah, I mean,
but it's,
the landlord has to comply with the law.
yeah, and a withdrawal notice should have come to the selectmen, to the planning board, to the, the list of people, that the land was being withdrawn, and it didn't.
Well, there's two things. There's a withdrawal and there's a conversion. And I think probably when you have that meeting, that'll be what they're discussing.
Well, you can't.
Yeah.
When I know more.
Yeah, I mean,
At the moment, there are some uncertainties about that we
Yeah,
will
but-
expect to have some resolution.
My point just is that I'm uneasy about the situation, have been since, years. I think Joe may have mentioned this when he was
Yes,
here.
I do seem to remember that topic having come up.
Yes.
Anyway.
Anyway, as far as reviewing the project, sort of highlighting the project, while there are four of us who are quite familiar with this, having sat through it for quite a number of meetings, there's one who has not.
Right.
And my question for you, Jim, is to what extent are there things that you'd like to go over to review with us during the meeting, as opposed to taking your time to review the record offline?
There's a lot,
There's a lot there.
when we do a cell tower. There's a lot.
We did one the first week that I was here, I believe, right, with the
But
spring.
it wasn't, wasn't that just add a,
Right, that was adding antennas.
that's a rather different thing.
Yeah, this is a whole different thing. There are things like the RF report, the coverage analysis. Sort of
Compatibility.
Compatibility.
There's a great deal more discretion in a special permit than there is in what the FCC lets you do once you've got the tower up.
Yep.
Which, that new rules that say they can add a certain amount, whatever it is, which
And
they didn't used to be able to do.
And Mr. Chair, one thing I think would be beneficial as well is if we're skipping a direct presentation of some of the materials since it is a new hearing. If there is any members of the public that feel they want to hear it fresh for this new hearing, we should encourage them to let us know that they want to hear that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we don't need to skip anything. I mean,
You know,
we can walk
but-
through the
but-
plans.
There are people, there are a lot of people. If, I think we should do what board members need, and if the public has questions, cause we went over this a whole lot, and most of
Yes.
the people who were interested, I think, were involved. But I'm happy to, hear from anybody, but I'm not sure that we need to spend 2 hours, going through it tonight,
That's I
unless
don't know.
you want to. You can enjoy yourself and read through the Communications Act of 19, whatever it is, and all the rules.
Why doesn't Mr. Marino present the Earth
Sure.
movement
That would,
calculations that you had asked about? And why don't we have Mr. Usmani present the RF coverage issues that this is intended to solve and how it solves them?
My only question on the RF coverage is, are you going to be revising what you've presented to have the new tower height, or do you feel that's accurately covered in the materials you've already?
I think we got
Correct.
new,
There is information in
Yep.
the materials. Everybody has different questions because they're presented in different ways on
Yeah.
those different plans. I think
Yep.
it would be helpful probably to, a refresher maybe for most of the board and more information. It doesn't have to take a long time. And I'm sure Mr. Maxon will have questions if he reviews this anyway.
I think I recall getting, looking at
Yep.
the new coverage. I was mainly looking at, all right, well,
Yeah.
how does
anyway.
it change? How much does it change, and is there a chance to make it better? Because it's still, it still conflicts with our bylaw about being attractive. I don't know, not unattractive, not
Mr. Chair.
not being in conflict with what's around it and so on.
If I may just add, yeah, I think the best way to proceed is to have the expert speak to and address some of the issues that were in the
Yes.
memo, and also give a more succinct overview, just so Jim can be familiar. And
Yeah, that's what-
we'll need to get peer review from Mr. Maxon anyway. So
Why don't we start with the plan of the whole project so you can walk them through the components of the project, Jesse, and then you can do this erosion control. So, yeah, maybe show the elevation too, but start with the site plan. That's probably good enough. Give you some context. When we just do the overview, so where it is, etc.
So we'll start on A1. So, just to recap, raw land cell tower project. It's a 48-acre parcel, located, just off of Lazy Hill. It's off of Follette Street. The parcel, has two areas of frontage along Follette Street. One of them is almost fully impacted by wetlands. The other one is partial. As was said earlier, we're using the easternmost one, and that crossing was approved by conservation. Basically, we have a driveway that runs along the property line in the beginning for about 300 feet. It follows existing trails to the extent that it can before it switchbacks up the hill, and that's to provide a slope and driveway construction that can be accessed by multiple vehicles. At the top here, it's about 300 feet off the ridge. There's a 40 by 60 fence compound. Inside this compound, there's stone. It's surrounded by fence. This is where the monopole would reside. On the ground, there would be individual lease areas where approximately 10 by 20 feet in size, where individual carriers would lease space there. one of those being obviously Verizon. That ground equipment would be there, and the antenna equipment would be up top. As was stated before, it's an unmanned facility, so there's no human habitation there. It's a remotely monitored site, so there's no smoke, dust, or odor once it's constructed. Doesn't need potable water, doesn't need sanitary service. It does need power and telecommunications, like in a form of fiber. Yeah, so
That's your layout.
yeah, this is the layout up top. This is a zoomed in version there, and you can see, we just talked about it. Poles in the middle, and there's these ground spaces, of which Verizon is shown here. There's basically refrigerator sized cabinets, and they also a gen set, and they have a spot for, in order to power the gen set, there's a propane proposed. As was stated, originally, when we first came in last year, it was a 170-foot tower, and then that's been dropped. It's now a 155-foot tower. That's the old one. So the current is here. It has room for up to 4 carriers, but as Verizon is the one that's looking to develop the site, the only carrier of interest at this point is Verizon. They'd be located at the top at
150.
150. Yep.
When you say room, are you saying with or without the potential extension?
There's no extension proposed. Just
I know,
150.
but, so if you had an extension, you could go to 5 carriers,
Well,
or something like that.
an extension, under the law may be possible, but it's not proposed here. A carrier,
So it's 4 on.
it's
the
4,
150.
and the way it would work is, so Verizon's at the top. If someone came in and was looking, they'd have to show you that that lower level below Verizon wouldn't work before, you could really
Yeah, but-
extend it up.
but-
That'd be the standard approach there. But again, that's not what's proposed. I think later on we'll hear from RF, and for various reasons, the 170 was dropped to 150. They can get not quite as good a coverage as 170, but not losing a significant amount and still covering the gap. That's what it was settled on there.
155, I think.
That's the top of the tower.
Yeah.
Yep, top of the tower, 155. What they call the rad, or the center of the antennas, would be 5 feet lower, 150. As far as the location, it's about 1,160 feet off the road, so it's fairly distant up the site. Like I said, it's a good-sized site, about 48 acres. We're only impacting about 5 or 6% of it, so the great majority of it, 94, 95% of it, will be left in its current state. Just to correct something on the application, and on the application, I believe it said it was a 1,483-foot long road. Those numbers are transposed. It's actually about 1,843. It's shown properly on the plan. I believe there's a typo on the cover, and that's what everybody looked at the cover and provided that. I'll take the blame for that. My fault on that.
What's the construction of the driveway?
Construction of the driveway is gravel. On either, as you're going up the road, every about 500 feet, there's a turnout. So if any vehicle is coming down as you're coming up, there'd be adequate space there to pass. Generally, after these are built, you're talking, traffic impacts less than a single family house. Couple times a month, per carrier, you may get somebody to do some maintenance up there, or if they had to fill the propane tank. So there's not a very intensive traffic use at all.
I way back, I seem to remember, it's been a long time since I helped write the bylaw that we're dealing with. But I know that it had come up on one cell tower, at least, about what the bylaw called for in terms of construction of the driveway. And we might want to look at that. I seem to remember giving a waiver to where it was crossing a farm a long time ago. So there might be.
Okay. Mr. Giamo can check. I don't think there's generally too much guidance there. But as was stated, and I think Fiona's getting it re-looked at, but there was peer review by Graves Engineering. There is a plan that was added in there on the access. So what we ended up doing during the process with conservation is out by the roadway. It's 16 feet wide. It narrows down a little bit at the crossing to avoid more fill, and then it continues up the hill. It's got the turnouts. Again, it's just a driveway. It's not habitable. It's not a road. So in keeping the disturbance down, the earthwork numbers down, these are all how we'd normally do that. The slopes of the driveway are generally 10% or below. There are a couple spots that are a little bit steeper, but generally you're looking at about 10%, which is a reasonable driveway, especially for an uninhabited tower. Stormwater, this was reviewed and approved by conservation. It also had peer review. There are 3 detention basins. There's stone lined swales. And the idea is that the site mitigates for its increases in impervious and the clearing that's done. So it does meet state stormwater regulations. As far as earthwork and erosion control, just wanted to point everybody out to end of the set that you have. There's an erosion control plan that has several best management practices on it to control erosion during construction. In the approval for Conscom, they also have bulleted several different conditions that we have to meet for that, including getting a permit with EPA prior to construction for disturbance over an acre. So that's pretty well covered under those permits. As far as earthwork numbers and talking a little bit about them, in order to get the crossing to dig out and create storage in those detention basins, weave our way up of the hill in a matter that is not too steep. There is some earthwork quantities. Now, what was put into the application, I'm happy to say, is inaccurate because it was based upon a previous revision. One of the last things we did at Conscom was address some comments that the folks had, and our numbers actually got better because of that. So I'm happy to report that the numbers that are on the plans that are on A2, and they were also captured on the peer review letters from Graves the last time around. Those are the correct numbers. And to report on them, if you take the existing surface as it is now, and you compare that with the surface as designed, there's a net cut, which means there's a net export of material off the site of about 1,625 yards. In addition to that, in order to build the road and provide gravel and the strength we need, there's engineered materials that need to be brought in the form of gravel, stone, things like that. That's an additional 2,000 yards. So the total earthwork that needs to go off and come onto the site here, you're looking at about 3,650 yards or so. So 2,000 yards in material brought on, and about 3,000 that comes off, and that 3,600 that comes off, and that's that delta 1,625. I would say if you look, you're talking, because it's a long driveway, 1,800 feet or so, it's, equivalent to maybe a small subdivision or a small to medium commercial facility. It's certainly not a small number, but it is not an exorbitant number. Just for context, last year I was involved in a project to build fields near a high school, and the project had an order of 30,000 yards of material being moved around. So, we're a small percentage of that. As far as where trucks would go, that's more of a construction thing, but if my familiarity with the region is all correct, I believe 146 is west of here. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And my recollection is there's a lot of gravel along those corridors, so that's probably the direction it would come. That Sutton side would be my guess on that. But I guess ultimately we'd be, up to the Verizon and its contractor. But my understanding is most of the gravel pits that are nearby are on that corridor. Let's see if there was anything else here I missed.
Oh, thanks.
I think that's about it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So, one thing I don't think I brought up the last time we met anyway, so this is just a thought I'm having. Has there been any modeling around like fire apparatus traveling this road all the way to the actual tower? Like, my thought is if one of these generators.
We did look at that. Historically, they're not driving big, their largest apparatus up there, but we did take the opportunity to, I'll show you a plan in here where we did do that.
Because given the length, I'm imagining that if there was a fire right near where the tower is, they'd want at least some sort of tanker to get as close as they can, so they don't have to stretch hoses, that far along.
Pump the water uphill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's not likely to happen.
Yeah, so this is the driveway access plan. It's actually an A4, and we created this plan to sort of address exactly what you're talking about. So what we used is a typical vehicle that they might use on these sort of remote sites, and we show it going up the road, and there's plenty of every 500 feet there's a place that you could actually pass, show it turning around at the top, and that'd be like a rescue truck. For example, if somebody was up on the pole and needed emergency medical, all of the climbers are trained in this, but you'd relay them down to the ground, and that the person could leave the site there. As far as big fire or something like that, there's no buildings really in the site, just small cabinets. So you're talking brush truck type stuff or an engine maybe to get up there. And like I said, we got two spots that are a little steeper than 10%, but generally 10% all the way up with an adequate turnaround on the top. So as far as cell towers go, this has got really good access. We do sites all over New England, and some of them are helicopter access only. So some of them have cart paths for ATVs. Up in Maine, there's some sites it's literally ATV access only. So
How are
here in Massachusetts, in a town like yours that's has the available emergency folks and driveway bylaws, this is pretty representative road of what you can get for most of your access up there.
Yeah, that question comes up partly because we have our fire department has its largest engine, its tower, is really more difficult than most to deal with slopes. It hangs way out, and we've had they had trouble with the new fire station coming out to the road because it was it was scraping, and it's come up in other projects, but probably not getting into
I don't
that.
imagine they're going to try taking ladder one up this.
No, I've never seen that. I've done permitting in hundreds of communities, and that's generally not the approach that they take. I mean, they're welcome to take whatever approach they want, but generally that, like I said, it's unmanned, it's uninhabitable, it's a U. It's the same thing as like, you have power lines and those little access roads that go there.
Yep.
Same thing. Again, those are holding, obviously power utilities. We have a wireless telecommunications, but that structure, that pole, very similarly constructed. So
I guess if there was a fire, you mentioned power. Some fires could start forest fire or whatever brush and trees there are up there. Then you begin to have an issue.
yeah, a good point to bring up is it's been industry standard for some time that the compound itself and its buffer around here, this whole area would be stone, basically 3/4 stone. And the idea is that keeps the weeds down and that keeps any of that brush and sort of areas of the woods pulled back and under control. It's better obviously for access, it's better around the equipment, and it knocks down the available fuel per se.
Yeah.
So that's been long an industry standard there, so that's a plus.
Okay, in the interest of letting everybody,
So,
all our business get done.
Yes,
Let's,
we're going to move on to have Sohail present. And if you could pull up, please, the I'll tell you which one it's called. It's called supplement, and it shows the proposed coverage at 150 feet. You see this one?
Do you know what exhibit that is?
I think it's 12.
12?
I could be wrong, but that's what I think it is.
I don't know what exhibit it is. It was with our, I think it was with our new filing, but
yeah, it's exhibit 12, and it's just one plot?
that one is just a one plotter. Yeah. You want to just there you go. It's up on the board.
Would you mind bringing up the one without the site coverage, please?
Oh, the one the
Just
the
just to
pre-covered
show
one?
Mr. Davidson, the impact of
Sure.
not having a site and then
I think that's
When it's-
9.
when the site's added.
1 second. Let me get back to the main screen.
That would be in the RF report.
That
In
would-
the RF
That would be
report?
in the original RF report. The,
Yeah.
Okay, so
The exhibits that they have on.
yeah.
And it's the first.
Yeah, so
be the
it would,
first
it would,
type.
it would be in Exhibit 8, it would be the first plan.
okay. Let me get there.
Oh, it's.
That should be it. This is from the RF report.
There you go, Simon.
Thank you.
Which one is that in our,
That's exhibit 8.
That's Exhibit 8, it's the first map. This is the original map that shows the coverage gap that Verizon's trying to address with
Right.
the Grafton 5 site in the middle.
Page 13, Bob. PDF page 13.
In the RF report.
There's no TV screen visible
Well,
from here.
yeah, I can see it there. So just to go over very quickly what this plot represents and the colors and the symbols. This is a map of Grafton area with the surrounding towns, and the symbol, the blue symbols in the middle of the map, which say Grafton 5, is the proposed site location. The green color represents the coverage that Verizon has in the area, and that's in the threshold of minus 95 dBm, which is considered to be somewhat reliable coverage. Reliable coverage is termed as good coverage where you can maintain a decent phone call and have a reasonable data session. The white spaces don't necessarily mean that there isn't coverage, but it's just below the threshold of reliable coverage. I've named the roads that are around the site, which is Grafton 5, the proposed site location. And then as we transition to the page where the proposed site is providing coverage, you will see that a lot of the white spaces will be filled in by the proposed site.
So that's this one. If you pull up
The exhibit,
the exhibit 12.
That's exhibit 12,
okay.
Thank you.
I think.
Oh, let me just.
I'll wait for it to come on.
It was up before. There you go.
Can I borrow that, please?
Yeah, so, just show the area, sir.
Thank you. So if you just recall the previous slide where there was a lot of white spaces, you can see the additional coverage. I've shown it in a different color, which is orange, in this new slide, and that highlights where you're getting coverage just from the proposed site location.
This map is the same as the prior map, except some of the white area here is orange. The orange represents the new coverage that
So-
comes from this site.
Just want to say that orange isn't the only aren't the white spaces filled in by orange aren't the only spaces, but this is additional coverage on top of the existing coverage that there is in the area of Grafton. Some of the major roads that are being covered are State Highway 122, Millbury Street, Main Street, State Highway 122A, Follett Street, obviously close to the site, and a lot of other roads and arteries in the town and going outside the town.
If you remember, one of the objectives is the school along Millbury Street that is able to be served by a tower at this height. It's the little curved part of Millbury Street.
Near Crosby Road.
Yes.
If there's any specific questions, I can.
Well, I think the other thing that probably would be good if you can do it quickly,
Sector
Sohail,
map.
is to explain that we did look at other
Location.
heights. You have analysis on, it's in the report, no, it's in the supplement.
I have it.
Yeah, I know, but I wanna know which ones they are, the height analysis, I think it's exhibit 10. And it would be the sheet that says supplement C,
That's what I brought.
yes, that's it.
Can I borrow that one?
Yeah, sure.
please?
I mean, I can explain it if you want, but
So in this slide, what we do is we propagate at various heights. So the highest rad center is colored red at 165 feet. Then there's 136 feet above that. So if you can imagine layers upon layers, and then the shortest height is at the very top. Actually, the existing coverage is at the very top. Then you have 96 feet. Below that is 116 feet. Below that is 136 feet, and at the very bottom is 165 feet. I believe we did that also for 150 feet as well.
well, 150 feet you just showed.
Yeah.
You just
Okay.
showed
Yes.
150 feet.
So the analysis was done to see, how much loss in coverage there will be as we drop our height. And you can clearly see, when there's, so let's say I'm comparing the red and the yellow. So wherever you see where you see the yellow overlapping the red and it's not overlapping the red, that's where you're losing the coverage, dropping from 165 feet to 136 feet.
So the white area.
No, not the white area. So if you just focus on the red and the yellow, yellow being above the red. So because yellow is shorter in height, so it's not propagating as far as red is. So that's why there's a delta in the coverage. And that's how you can, visualize that, okay, this is how much coverage I'm losing. And remember, if you just look at the scale to put it all into perspective, the scale bar that's at the bottom, the total length is 1.5 miles, and half of that is 0.75 miles. So a very small portion on the map is going to be several hundred feet.
Yeah, let me try to explain that a little bit differently. So Hill, if I
I
could.
do have stats for
Yeah, let me try to explain that a little bit differently, so maybe it's a little bit clearer. The green area here is the existing coverage. All the other colors are white on the existing coverage map, but here they're colored because they are, it shows you incrementally how much coverage is added with each level of tower. So blue area is added if you only had a 96-foot tall tower. The additional yellow area is added if you had a 136-foot tall tower. There's gray in there. I'm sorry. The additional gray is added if you had a 116-foot tower. Then the additional yellow would be the increment for 136 feet, and finally the red is the increment for the 165 feet. We previously showed you the 150-foot radius. Rad line, and it's not overlaid on this map because it was just presented at a different time. But we could make that comparison also. But that the obvious point is the taller the tower gets, the more coverage you get. The critical point here is at 150 feet, Verizon does meet the coverage objectives, including along Millbury Street and some of the other critical areas. If it gets below that, if it gets down to 136 feet or 116 feet on the center line, it really doesn't. You can see how much that yellow pulls back, and that's the next increment below the 150 that we showed you before. I think the other point to make, just in the interest of time, would be, and just to bring Mr. Davidson up to speed at what else has been looked at. There were two other sites that were taken into account at the board's suggestion, and just based on looking at alternative sites. One is 188 Providence Road. This site proved to be quite a distance to the east, and that's on the this is also on the alt sites. This would be 11, I think, exhibit 11. And so that shows multiple different potential heights for that 188 Providence Road site, but none of them reach the area that the Grafton 5 site is intended to reach. It doesn't provide coverage that overlays the area Verizon is aiming to cover, and you can see there's still a lot of white area that's not covered that Verizon would cover with its proposed site. The other location was 21 Follette Street, which is a town-owned site, and the issue is similar. It may be a little better coverage than the Providence Road coverage would be, but it again does not hit some of the critical targeted areas for the coverage gap that Verizon's trying to fill with this application.
Can I just add?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So what I was talking about between the different colors and the representation when they're overlaid on each other, we did run some stats to figure out how much road coverage is being lost or how much business population count. So just by dropping from 165 feet to 136 feet, we're losing 4.04 miles of coverage. So even though you may not see it in, that well on the map, to an untrained eye, you can say I see very little gaps, or there's, yellows overlapping red most of the places. So why do you need such a high tower, but when you look at the stats and you run pop counts, that shows the real picture, and we're losing a lot of roadway coverage, so it's actually 6.13 miles and 19.5% is what we're losing.
Yeah, and these numbers are in the filing, and I think the board is interested in moving things along. So let's
I just wanted to
stop that. Yep, thank you.
I was at Blackstone Golf Course yesterday, and the coverage is spotty there. I was hoping they might show up on this map, but I see you have high fields covered on over there, so that's good for the folks there.
Okay. What else, do you have before, that you want to do tonight?
I think as far as tonight goes, because I know we will be coming back, I would like to ask Mr. Green if he wants to suggest a date for a balloon test or wants to work that out at a later time.
Hi, Mike. Timothy Green on behalf of Verizon Wireless. Don't have an actual date yet. Working with a couple of companies on getting a date for that. And I can work with the planning board about getting some sort of a notice done when we have somebody locked down.
Okay.
Okay. Given the concerns from the people around the area, I think it's important to consider not just, us, but them, because they're gonna wanna, if you do it on a Thursday morning, there are a lot of people who aren't gonna make it.
I think we would typically do these on a Saturday.
Right,
Is the way
exactly.
those would be set up.
I think you may have had one where it was Saturday, and if the weather was bad, then it was Sunday,
That's typically how to do it. Yes.
and not too early. Well, across the middle of the day, probably. But I'd like us to have fewer questions and complaints about was the balloon straight up and, all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe David comes out with his rangefinder.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but, somehow.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a wind issue, and so if it's too windy, they won't
Yeah.
fly the
but
balloon.
If there's the slightest breeze, people are gonna say, this test is no good. And trying to anticipate that we do it so that we have answers about that. I think David has mentioned, like using a rangefinder.
That's fine. And the folks who take the photographs, and I think we would be using a different vendor this time, but the folks that take the photographs are good about taking the photographs when the wind speed is least and it's pointing straight up, and they can also adjust if they need to adjust positioning. When an abutter or somebody else sees the balloon and it's pinned at an angle, that's not when those photo sims are being taken. It's just that we can't control the wind, and it's flying all day, and sometimes the wind gusts.
It's a little tricky, having gone to the balloon test. It can be a little tricky to tell whether the wind is blowing when you're a quarter of a mile away or half a mile away, however, over in the subdivision. And I'm not sure if there's some methodology to help observers have a better idea about that.
Fiona, can we have, whenever this balloon test is scheduled, especially if it's not, if the planning board doesn't have a meeting in between when it's scheduled and when it happens, can we make sure that it's not only posted on the planning department Facebook, the actual town of Grafton's Facebook, and ideally have the select board use it as their announcement as well?
Sure.
Just to make sure that it's.
Yeah, well, it has to be advertised twice, I think, like the hearing.
Yes.
So we'll cover the ground. Okay, anything before I open it up to comment?
No, and we understand this is going to be continued, so we reserve the right to present
Sure.
more information, answer more questions, but thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay,
Still want to have the public.
well, I wanna,
Yep.
board first, anything right now up here? No. Anybody from the public who, either out there in internet world or in here, that wants to comment or, go ahead. Name and address.
Adam Ray, 42 Follette Street.
Why don't you slip the mic up so you don't have to?
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
I'd like our consultant to look into why I've gone to the Millbury Street School and the South Grafton Elementary School and made phone calls from those parking lots, recorded them, dated, and then gone to every location on their map that they say there's a gap in, drove those and without uninterrupted coverage. How that can be, I don't have a map with colors and everything. I just drove them, outlined them, timed them, and I'm wondering why you can do that and have good coverage. That's one. Two, I think this project and the scope of this project has a lot to do with other things other than the needs of the town of Grafton. The needs of the town of Grafton, from my looking into it, are minimal compared to, say, Sutton, which you drive into Oxford, you always drop a call. You drive all over Sutton, you drop calls. Millbury, you drop calls. But in the town, the scope of this project for our needs that are minimal, if they are even minimal, can certainly be met without the scope of this project, which is a massive industrial project through protected open space land. And we don't have to get into the fact that Sutton took it and we go all through this again. From my understanding, from talking to people, that the town's right of first refusal was not granted. So that's a side thing that you're going to be looking into. But I would like our consultant to maybe look into why that is, that you can have coverage and say there's a gap. So I'm a little confused about that. And a whole bunch of other things. This is just early. I've got all my stuff at home. I got to go through it all and for the next meeting. But, I'd just like to end too with, with the reading of the bylaws, it clearly states that scenic areas are to be protected in this town, and they're not to put a cell tower above a ridge line in the town of Grafton. So I think our bylaws are clear, and I'm against this project. Thank you.
Yeah, I think David will be able to explain, and I think our applicants could explain some of that, but, being an engineer, but we'll cover that ground maybe another time, the next time, well, when David makes it. Okay, who else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Anything else up here?
No.
Okay. I know that, you want to, ask for a continuation.
Yes, please. We would like a continuation. I don't know if you have, when you think that would be.
Our next meeting after tonight is August 14th.
And do you want us to continue before the balloon test, or should we have the balloon test and then come back?
We might save people's time. What?
I think the balloon test would be smart. We also have a gym.
I think that we're gonna spin fewer wheels if we wait to meet until after the balloon test.
Okay.
Because the balloon test is gonna give us a lot of, new,
We won't know when that is.
New
I just wondered,
input.
you want to continue this like to your first September meeting and
Sure.
Hopefully
Purpose
we'll
of the
have
balloon
test
test,
before
is that
then.
just to
Yep.
see where the
To
tower would extend
visualize,
to?
visualize the height.
yeah, they
We have August 14th, August 28th, and September 11th.
wanna
Thank you.
line and
September 11th.
run it up.
I don't
And then everybody runs
We
around.
also
and
can see where
looks
We have a
and
gym
the,
and on the 14th there was,
they have
and on the
like a
28th
consultant.
already.
Oh, okay, so
Takes
So
pictures.
it's,
If you
this
look at the
is
old
better.
stuff, you'll see
September 11th.
Pictures.
You look at the
And
picture, you
check
see
my
photo
pictures.
simulations.
I have
They
some
take-
pictures in there.
the 170.
Yeah, they did not, I
Well,
don't,
it was supposed to be 170, but people say, you know,
they did a photo simulation which roughly approximated 155, the most recent one. But there was, it wasn't a precise measurement.
The address 53.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So-
take a picture of the balloon, then you draw it over the same height.
but if you look at the photo simulation, and then I had a couple of pictures that I took from over, the place, the
Alright.
place that you see is over in Sutton. There's a subdivision there. You go up in there and
You'll fill in the time, right?
up above the houses.
Thank you.
You just don't see very much from the graph.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair,
I
Yes.
move that we approve the applicant's written request to continue this hearing until September 11th at 7:30 p.m.
second.
September 11th. Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? A roll call.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Veckatraman,
Aye.
and Mr. Hatfinger.
Thanks, we'll see you all then.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along to 124 Westboro.
Right, that one. Yep. Pursuant to sections 1.5.7, 1.3.3, and 4.3 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, July 24th, 2023, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider an application for a special permit and site plan approval request for a major industrial complex consisting of light manufacturing and warehouse facilities located at 124 Westboro Road, shown as Grafton Assessors Map 12, Lot 1B. Said property is located in an office, light industrial, OLI, and Chapter 43D Priority Development Overlay District, PDSOD, zoning district. The applicant is Westboro Road Property Owner LLC, CO GFI Partners, and the owner is Massachusetts Development Finance Agency. Copies of the application and plan are available for public inspection on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the Planning Department Development Projects webpage. This will be a hybrid meeting conducted in person and by remote participation. Please see www.grafton-ma.gov/planning board for more information.
I wonder if we can find, I can see half of the board. There's just no solution to this.
Did that presentation board, do we have a digital copy of that, correct?
You do, yes.
Okay.
I actually had a PDF presentation that I sent ahead of the meeting as well. I was hoping we could share that.
Sure. So start with the presentation.
Yes, please. That has all of our plans in it too that we'll need unless the board has specific detailed questions. I'll go ahead and get started if that's okay.
Yeah.
Good evening to the chair on the board. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Haley Palazzola, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Westboro Road Property Owner, LLC, an affiliate of GFI Partners. I'm also joined this evening by my co-project manager, Hannah Jadovich, Drew Garvin, and Josh Whirling of Bowler Engineering, our civil engineers, and our traffic engineer, Courtney Sudak of Tetra Tech. We're here this evening to present our site plan application and special permit for a major industrial complex for the property at 124 Westboro Road. Before we get into the technical details of the plan, I want to take a minute to introduce you to GFI Partners and a little bit of background on who we are as a developer. If you can go to the next slide, Fiona. GFI Partners is a full-service real estate developer based in Boston, Massachusetts. Full service meaning that GFI oversees every stage of the project lifecycle, from the acquisition, permitting and entitlement phase, construction, through stabilization. As long-term property owners, we have an existing portfolio of over 17 million square feet of commercial real estate space. and actively permitting about 8 million square feet of industrial space throughout the Northeast. If you go to the next slide, Fiona. This next slide highlights a few of our active permitting and construction projects, industrial projects throughout the region, which range from big box fulfillment and distribution warehouse space to light industrial manufacturing, life science, and light industrial, what we call flex space. For some time, GFI represented the largest industrial developer of space within the master plan Fort Devens Park. And through these relationships with mass development, GFI was introduced to the site in Grafton that we're here presenting tonight. If you go on to the next slide. Again, this is just to highlight some of GFI's light manufacturing, light industrial development, similar to what we're proposing here in the Grafton site. So we can skip through this one just in the interest of time. So I'll go ahead and give you a high-level project overview of the site before I turn it over to our civil engineering team to give you more technical overview. So Mass Development's vision of the property included a research and development, life science, and general light industrial space to support this economic longevity of the town of Grafton. Being densely populated and highly educated workforce, we believe that this proposed use that we have here this evening fits in line with Mass Development's vision for the site, but also the town's vision for the site. So 124 Westboro Road is approximately 33.2 acres site, bounded by Westboro Road to the north, Institute Road to the west, and wooded areas to the east and the south. The property is zoned for office light industrial and also located in the Priority Development Site Overlay District. This project site has also been certified Platinum Bio Ready, designation administered by MassBio. The property is directly adjacent to Grafton's Master Plan Science Park and down the street from Tufts Veterinary Campus and minutes from Centec Park, which I know was mentioned earlier this evening. In addition to the site plan and special permit application that we're asking for this evening, the project also filed a notice of intent with Grafton's Conservation Commission. We also submitted our stormwater permit application with Conservation Commission as well, which is under review. Because the property is being transferred from a state agency, we fall under MEPA jurisdiction. Our project filed an expanded environmental notification form with the MEPA office back in February. We were scoped for a draft environmental impact report, which was filed on June 30th, and we're awaiting that comment period and to be scoped for our final environmental impact report. The project that we're proposing is a two-building, each 100,000 square feet, light industrial, light manufacturing warehouse facilities designed to attract local and regional users of these types of uses. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Josh to talk more about the site plan. If you go to the next slide, that would be great. And then one more slide.
Nope, the
Oh, sorry.
one back, that's great. There we go. And that's the same plan colored rendering that's behind me here, so I may point to things. I talk with my hands. So as Haley had indicated, I'm Josh Swirling. I'm a professional engineer with Bowler Engineering with offices in Southborough. I've been before you folks before. I'm also a resident of town here. The site is just over 33 acres. We're proposing the 200,000 square foot buildings that you see there. And you can see the truck court areas located central to the buildings, and we have office. We intend on having office on either side of the building with 482 parks available for passengers. We have taken advantage of the provision in the bylaws to bank 30% of those spaces, so 144 will be banked.
Does that show where the banking is?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, the green, the.
Outlined in black.
Yep.
The black boxes.
Here and here. And on the site plans themselves, it's shown in a little clearer detail. They're dashed in on the black and white site plans. And on the grading plan, we show how they're going to be graded too. We take care of the details to make sure that they're engineered properly. We have two driveways, one located on Route 30, the other on Institute Road. The Institute Road driveway will be limited to passenger and emergency vehicles, and our trucks will use the Route 30 driveway. We have a lot of earthwork here. If you guys have been by the site, there's kind of a hill right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle.
Yep, which is wonderful for us. We gotta kind of knock the top of the hill down and spread it around. We have roughly 60 feet of height on that hill when you're down at the lowest point on Route 30. It's not that bad when you're up on Institute Road. It slopes off less dramatically to Institute Road and to our neighbors to the south and to the east of us. We're handling all of our stormwater on site. We have 2 underground basins and 4 at-grade basins. We're proposing, appropriate erosion sediment control around the entire site. We are Graves is undertaking a review. They're not complete yet, but certainly by your next meeting, I would anticipate that we'd have their comments. We have looked at the landscaping with our neighbors in mind, where we have new residential neighbors on Institute Road, so you can see there's a denser screening. There's also some trees planted throughout. There's roughly 200 plantings proposed currently. We are doing 200,000 square foot buildings and this amount of parking. There's a decent amount of clearing that's involved, but we are returning a lot of the areas back to green space. So when we're all said and done, we'll have 2/3 of the site will be reverted back to green, or retained as green. So we've abided by the Conservation Commission's 25-foot no disturb. We have utilities all available within the right of way. We have lighting proposed at varying heights, 35 feet, 25 feet, all LED fixtures that'll be directed inward to the site and downward, so as to not annoy our neighbors, but to provide adequate lighting with good uniformity throughout the development. So that's a high level overview. A couple of the other little tidbits I want to point out. We're doing 20 electrical vehicle charging stations day one. We'll have the ability, should our tenants have needs, to go up from there to roughly 25% of our parking. And with that, I will turn it back over to Haley.
Thank you, Josh. Fiona, when you have a minute, if you could go on to the next slide, I will go ahead and present the typical floor plans and the elevations that we filed. So the first plan, Building A and Building B, are very similar. This shows the 100,000 square foot building. We're proposing 36 clear height on the interior, 2 utility rooms, and 50 by 50 bay spacing approximately on the interior, with the 2-story office on each corner. And those are, you show the bump outs, and they show really well on the renderings that I'll get to in a minute. Also across the front of the building is approximately 17 loading docks. Being that we don't know who the tenant is yet, we provided an abundance of loading docks. I don't think that we'll need that many, but it's, again, just because this is a spec development, we wanted to leave as much flexibility as possible. The building has been designed that it could subdivide into 1 or 2 tenants if it needed to be. So if you would go on to the next slide, Fiona. This is a typical elevation of Building A. Again, you can see the glass glazing at the offices on either corner at the proposed west elevation. Using the Grafton bylaws to calculate average grade to average roof height, we're proposing and asking the board for the height up to 44 feet and 9 inches on this first building. And again, that's measured from the average grade to the top of the roof, being that we have a slope a pitched roof of a fourth of an inch per foot. By the time you get to the center roof, it climbs a little bit. So that's the request for building height. If you would go on to the next slide, please. This is building B's floor plan. Again, almost a mirror image of building A. So I won't spend too much time on this slide. And then the following building B elevations, very similar. Based on these average grades, we're proposing a roof height of 44 feet and 3 inches. On this next slide, we prepared some rendering views one more slide of the site. So on the top left-hand corner, the north building aerial, this is the entrance off of Route 30. You can see building A on the left for the main driveway for trucks and cars that Josh mentions, employee parking on the left-hand side, and then further off in the distance, you see building B's office entrance. And on the next image, south building aerial is the view from Institute Road and that employee entrance. This is again just for passenger vehicles and emergency vehicles to use. The north building entrance down below is just a zoomed in view of the first photo of the employee entrance. You can see the EV charging stations in this photo. And then finally, the south building entrance is the photo just above that, but zoomed in, and you can see building A's loading docks across the parking lot. So those are the 3D renderings. I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Courtney Sudak, our traffic engineer, to do a traffic overview.
Good evening. For the record, Courtney Sudak from Tetra Tech, the traffic consultant for the project. So I'll just do a very quick overview of the traffic study we prepared. It was a detailed traffic impact and access study prepared in accordance with Mass DOT standards. We had contacted the town at the end of last year and identified an agreed upon study area of 6 intersections that you can see here. There's the Institute at Pine Street, Institute at Westboro Road, Institute at the proposed Audrina Road, which is partially under construction, and Institute at the driveway immediately to the south, which currently serves the Massachusetts Department of Youth Services, as well as Institute Road at East Drive, which is a subset of 3 little mini intersections that form a triangle. So we collected turning movement count data at each of the existing study intersections back in November. So the COVID pandemic, the effects of it are generally completed, but we did run a comparison to historical traffic volumes in the study area and found that they were on the order of like 5 to 9% less than pre-COVID conditions. So as out of an abundance of caution to present a conservative analysis, we increased the observed volumes by 10%, just in case there was a little effect from the COVID pandemic ongoing. And then we contacted the town to identify the planned and approved development projects in the area to develop the future year traffic volume, 7 years into the future without our project. We call that the no build condition. You can skip to the next slide. There are 3 projects that we included, and then we accounted for our project trips. So using the industry standard trip rates published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers for the 200,000 square feet of development, we estimated these trip volumes. So typically for a traffic study, we look at the weekday daily, the weekday AM peak hour, and the weekday PM peak hour for a commercial development like this project. And as you can see, we separated out into trucks and non-trucks. So the truck activity is very immaterial, particularly during the peak hours of the day when commuter traffic is heavy. Most of it would be concentrated more in the middle of the day. So the non-truck activity makes up the majority of the peak hour trips, and you're talking about a couple extra trips per minute. And then we estimated the trip distribution patterns, which are the travel routes that the employees and the trucks will use to access the site. So if you can flip to the next page, please. We based that on U.S. Census Journey to Work data. And then we multiplied those trip distribution percentages by the trip generation estimates I just presented to you to estimate the site trips, which are shown here just really quickly in case anyone's interested in a particular intersection. I have these in the slides, but you can just keep going, please. And then that's just the PM peak hour. And then we added those to the future no build to get the future build with the project. So these are just for reference if needed. We also took a look at the anticipated parking. And as Josh had mentioned, we're proposing a total of 482 parking spaces. 144 of those would be reserved. We ran those against the industry standard parking rates published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers for this type of use. And the peak parking demand ranges from 123 to 130 parked vehicles. So there should be no concerns about inadequate parking. It should definitely satisfy the needs of the site. And then we ran capacity analyses of all three conditions, existing, no build, and build at each of the study area intersections using highway capacity manual software known as Synchro for the unsignalized intersections. And we determined that the project really has no material impact. Vehicle queue increases of less than one additional vehicle for any particular movement at any of the study intersections. And then Fiona, if you could please. But Haley's team is willing to implement what we call a TDM program, Transportation Demand Management Program. So even though we've demonstrated that the project will have no material impact on the study area intersections and that there'll be adequate parking, just as an added measure, they're willing to implement these 4 TDM measures to try to reduce single occupancy vehicle use at the site, such as coordinating with the WRTA to determine if it makes sense to put a bus stop closer to the site given the proximity to the MBTA station, EV parking, preferential parking for carpoolers, and bicycle accommodations. So that's the traffic study in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
I've got a little bit. Peer review?
It's forthcoming. MDM has yet to.
Because I've never known an applicant's traffic study to find any problem with traffic ever. I've been here long enough to have,
Yes, yeah, no, and MDM's a great firm, so we're happy to receive their comments.
One of the things, though, when I first looked at this, I looked and I saw 30 some odd docks that would be tractor trailers. And then I see 25 trucks entering and exiting in a day. And I really wonder about the line in the manual that you generate your trips must cover an awful wide range of possibilities. And that struck me as strange, and maybe our peer reviewer will comment, but you got 462 trips for non-trucks and only 25 for trucks in a day. It really depends on what goes in there, doesn't it?
Yes, it obviously each tenant is a little different, but for ITE, their trip generation manual trip rates, particularly for this type of use, has a large variety of sites and study areas. Typically, why a warehouse has a significant number of docking bays as this is because oftentimes the trailers, or even the entire tractor trailer, if that makes sense for the particular tenant, will park overnight or store. They're not always coming and going like you might associate with more of like a last mile facility where they come in the morning and they leave at night. With the types of tenants we would anticipate for this type of use, we would believe that they may have those overnight and they would prefer to keep them docked.
Yeah, it just, I hope we can have a little more conversation about that
Of course, yeah.
generation at some point, because it just struck me oddly. WRTA service, I didn't realize the WRTA was running a bus up there, or if I knew it, I'd forgotten.
Yes, so they currently run a bus service past the site along Route 30. So they don't currently stop in the immediate vicinity of the site, but they stop, I believe, at the T station, and then they go west towards Route 140. So that's why we can't guarantee that they would be willing to put a stop, but
I'm chairman of the Regional Transportation Planning Committee at Central Mass Regional Planning, so we interact a lot with the WRTA. And I either knew this and forgot, or I never knew it, because we've been looking, I've been hoping that we'd get bus service over there for a long time. And apparently there's at least some service. I'll be interested to somebody tell me
yes,
how much service there is, but
it's bus route B. It may not be that frequent, but we can pull the more current information.
Just be curious.
Yeah.
EV charging made me remember that just very recently I've started seeing people agitate about handicapped EV charging accommodations, that handicapped people can have quite a lot of trouble with a more or less standard space. And I'm sure we're quite a long ways away from regulation for that, but it'd be a good thing to think about and look at. I think they want space to be able to get in and out of like a handicapped space to get in and out, and there was some about some sort of covering over, to protect from rain and whatnot. A new subject.
No, an excellent point, and I'm sure
that's just surfacing. And the one other thing that I caught, you mentioned trucks overnight. I think we'd really want to be sure that the trucks do not idle.
Go ahead.
Yes, that's typically a traffic mitigation measure that we recommend to all our clients is no idling. And, one of the things you can do is signage. And
I think there's actually a mass policy. Isn't there laws against, I think
particularly during the winter time, it's most enforced.
Because we did some of this with the site up at Wyman Gordon. Covered some of this ground. And when people start moving into the subdivision, and the project out by the road, out by Route 30, they're not going to appreciate the trucks, particularly the trucks, if they sit there running at all. So I think we are going to want to cover that base. Okay, go ahead.
So my only question, because I admittedly did not read the entire actual traffic report yet until our peer reviewer looked at it, but you did say you took some of the three sites that you said in the no build condition. Which three were those?
Yes, Village at Institute Road, Afonso Village, and just can't remember the third one off the top of my head. It's been a while.
Probably 8 Pine Street.
The
Village at Grafton Woods.
Yes, thank you.
Those are my guesses as well, but I wanted just to.
I remember reading those I read enough of the report to remember those.
All right, thank you.
I don't know if this really falls under the jurisdiction of traffic, but is it common to have a weigh station or something at a facility like this, or would that depend on the tenant?
No. On a private property, you usually see that with asphalt companies, usually with triaxle dump trucks. It's really tenant specific if they want a weigh station at their facility. But that won't have any effect on the site access driveways or the on-site operations.
I think I've got sort of two questions related to the proximity of the site to the MBTA station. One is, has any of the analysis, I think probably the traffic estimates would take into account some expectation of employees arriving by T rather than by car, which if that was estimated to be an appreciable number, that would reduce the trip generation perhaps slightly. I don't know if that is enough of a factor to have been taken into account here. And the second sort of related question gets into the TDM. Some TDM programs have an explicit transit or rail component. And I don't know whether the nature of the businesses that you anticipate locating here, granted that we don't know what they are, no one knows. But for this type of operation, is it expected that a significant fraction of the employees would be using rail?
We would expect some employees to use rail, as you mentioned, given the type of use it is. It would depend on shift hours and the availability of and frequency of the T. But as a conservative measure from a traffic analysis standpoint, we did not take credit for that, so that we applied the most number of cars that we would think this site would generate to the study area intersections to determine if there were any material change to the capacity analyses. So we did not account for that, but that's why they're going to coordinate with the WRTA to see if it would make sense to provide a stop at the site.
Yeah, I think for a worst case analysis, you'd want to assume the maximum number of trips, automobile trips.
Correct, yes.
I would also just add that it is a good marketing tool for the site to attract tenants, the proximity to the T.
Right, but whether it affects the traffic analysis, probably not much, if any.
Right.
Correct.
Prabhu has it.
Oh, go.
I had a couple of questions. One is, what are the three projects that you mentioned in terms of that you included as part of the traffic study? I thought you mentioned 3 projects.
I did, yes, thank you. Village at Grafton Woods, Afonso Village Mixed-Use Development, and the Village at Institute Road.
Okay. And the other question, leading off from where Dave was referring to pedestrian traffic, I was looking not from reduction in terms of vehicular traffic, but in terms of anything that you plan for pedestrian traffic, and how would the planning go in terms of accommodating the pedestrian traffic? I know there is a sidewalk from the train station, but I don't know if it comes all the way to the project site. And probably not a traffic question, but are there sidewalks being planned around the say by Institute Road and Route 30 to help facilitate any of the pedestrian traffic, not just from train station, but from other places?
So west of Pine Street, there is no sidewalk, which is why the applicant is going to coordinate with the WRTA to see if it would make sense to provide a stop in the vicinity of our site, as well as the new projects across the street of Afonso Village and the Village at Institute Road.
And
go ahead. Just to build on the specific point of pedestrian, it occurs to me to think that employees at this place potentially could be living in the 3 developments you mentioned. There's a 4th development that we discussed sort of a little bit earlier this evening, and that's the Claremont, the proposed subzone B of the 40R, which was at 5 Millennium Drive, which is immediately to the north of the MBTA station. So from all those two of those are apartment dwellings. The Afonso, the mixed use is condos, and then Village at Institute Road is single family homes. But all of those potentially could include people who might want to be working at this site. So pedestrian access from the north side of Route 30, from those Claremont and Village of Grafton Woods, pedestrian access from there to this site is something that's probably ought to be considered, taken into account.
Yeah, all I was gonna say, I think any changes along Route 30 for pedestrian access is something that I don't think that, I could be, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the town of Grafton can make a determination that, yes, we're going to do anything, even if, this applicant wanted to, put in a sidewalk, because it,
I
wouldn't
don't
isn't that
think
a-
that's a state road.
Route 30 is not?
Is it? No, I don't think so. State road, 122 is, anyway,
It's something.
but.
Yes, it's local jurisdiction. You're correct. It's local jurisdiction. You're correct.
I was wrong then.
Yeah. But I will say that from Pine Street-ish down to the Science Park, back when we permitted that about 1,000 years ago, we did push, and I think we got to have an area, they put a wall, there's a wall along some of that to have some space so that it's a start towards sidewalk in that part. And that's at least some fair part of the way already. That'd be the more in the way of a sidewalk from down at basically at Institute Road would be quite a benefit, I think, with all of the development that residential development that we're getting out there.
Yeah, so so if nothing else, between this project and some of the other things that are going on, we'll want to be looking at what can be done.
We can look into the
to
feasibility of
accommodate
that.
So, yeah.
Okay. Questions, comments, anybody out there?
I think my only extra comment to say is this is probably the best put together presentation for an application I've seen in my time on the planning board in the last 6-7 years now for me.
Justin, Mr. Wood. Thank you.
Well, and for what it's worth, that North Grafton Transit Village strategic plan that we mentioned earlier in connection with Millennium Drive.
Yes.
This project is also very much in line with it. That plan called for this type of project right in this location. So we've had this in fact, you mentioned, Bob, there was a thing that we did a while back on building height, and that was in connection with a project that was previously contemplated for this parcel.
Okay, so we're wonderful.
Does the complications around blasting and stuff apply to this space as well? I know that was an issue with one of the other projects.
Josh?
How much? He's asking about blasting in this project.
I don't know that we have specific information relative to how we're going to handle rock, but I do suspect there will be some rock.
Yeah, the question is, have you looked, the project we talked about a bit, the 40R across the way in Centec, turned out to have, when we did Centec, it turned out there was a lot of ledge that hadn't been planned on, and now that 40R, their one of their problems is supposed to be that they're going to have to do a lot of blasting, and someone always asks about the blasting, and I always tell them, talk to the fire chief.
Yeah. Did Pulte, did they blast or did they rip? Do you know?
I don't remember hearing about any blasting. If they did any blasting, it wasn't.
It wasn't much. I've driven by there, once a week.
I seem to recall some discussion of rock crushing, which I suppose maybe follows blasting.
Or ripping, yeah. I don't know that we know the specific method, but I'm sure we're going to encounter some stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember that Pulte involved that much cutting it.
Yeah. Wasn't too hilly.
No.
Soil testing didn't account for much ledge, but I'm sure we'll find some, but we did poke a dozen holes out there and we didn't hit much ledge. So
So did we cover the base on that? Are there more questions?
And
Okay.
if you find ledge, most likely it's gonna be right in that hill.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Exactly.
Okay, you probably want to ask us to continue the hearing to when? Oh, yeah, we want the peer review
Right.
and the engineer's review.
Right. If I may, we'll need to get response from DM and from Graves, and also I had a couple of questions in my memo that I think the most effective use of time would be. I'll send you a note. We'll add it as part of the meeting materials for the next meeting because they're pretty granular, and we're going to be continuing anyway. So I think that's the best.
So, yeah, we can continue to when you want. If the date you pick doesn't work, for what we can always send a contact through staff to continue even further than that.
Okay.
And our next meeting is August 14th. Beyond that, August 28th, September 11th. I can keep going if you want, but.
So, if it's okay with my team, we talked a little bit. Let's continue till the 14th, but we will likely continue if we don't have enough time to get the responses back from peer reviews and then refile.
Okay, well,
so
there's a form to sign, and
I'll move that we approve the applicant's grant the applicant's upcoming written request to continue the hearing until August 14th at 7:30 p.m.
I'll second it.
And that's seconded. Is there any discussion? Apparently not.
All right, Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
I vote aye, and Mr. Hassner.
Aye. There we go. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll look forward to seeing you and your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's see.
Yep. Yep.
I think we're up to Bull Meadow.
We are.
Bond reduction request. Fiona, where are we on that?
Yes. Sorry. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So the the developer requested a reduction, and Graves Engineering sent over a construction cost estimate. Let me pull it up on the screen. It'll be easier to see. One moment. Okay. So this was the original request, and pretty straightforward. Originally submitted on June 15th, 2023 for the Bull Meadow Estates subdivision. From there, we did link to the project. Thank you. We did link to the project on our in our meeting material. So if interested, that is linked. But the Graves construction cost estimate broke up the estimate into two sections. Section 1, which is Paddock Ridge Drive Station to Carriage House Lane Station. So ultimately here, you can see that the 20% of the 100% cost estimate is $279,000. Graves found that the scope of work that is I believe the remaining work in the value is $94,000. This is just for section 1, so it does appear at the outset that, from the numbers, it looks like we're going below the 20%, but actually when you incorporate section 2, which covers Paddock Ridge Drive Station 12 plus 50 to limit of work beyond Appaloosa Drive, the 20% of the 100% cost estimate, which is what, as the board knows, we always maintain 20% to cover our bases. The $143,000 there, and then the Graves report found $9,000. So ultimately, when you did the math, you see that the 20%, if you're combining the two sections, is maintained, and we're at I believe 24%. So there still have 4% that that would be probably their next ask until unless they want to go to town meeting and just wait for us for the rest of that 24% at that time when the road's ready. But yeah, we had no issues. This is standard, but Bull Meadow is this analysis and cost estimate incorporated comments that we've received from the public to date, including some comments regarding landscaping residents in the subdivision had reached out to me specifically, and that's included here, as well as drainage, etc. You can see the breakdown here on the left side of the screen, but yeah, I think, we didn't have any concerns, and the planning department didn't have any concerns, but happy to have the board discuss and answer what I can. Let me pull the explanation here.
The bottom line on what we're looking to approve is that the sum of the two 20% columns.
Mm-hmm. The sum of what I did was, we added the 94,000 plus the 9,000, and then did the math, and that came out to 24% of the total of the 143,000 plus 279. So it just took basically just between the two columns.
What numbers does
combined.
someone have to make a motion for?
I'll move it this way, and if this doesn't work, you can let me know. I move that we approve the bond reduction in accordance with Graves' review.
I think we should know which dollars, and be clear. There seem to be $4 numbers.
Yeah.
There's 279K, 94K,
right.
143K, and 9,000.
Natalia, can you just confirm this, please? Because I think, you had been speaking to the developer to coordinate this piece, and if you have anything to add, I think that would be helpful at this time, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question because I keep popping in and out. I'm having technical difficulties tonight, apparently.
Did the developer send anything to you specifically about a number to reduce by? Just so we can have a little bit more clarity. I mean, this like a number other than just requesting a cost estimate.
I am so sorry. I have no idea what you said.
Okay, maybe I
Yeah.
maybe I can guess. Since the 20% thing was my idea about 100 years ago, we had subdivisions that didn't have enough money because of lots of things happen.
Right.
And we had a subdivision go belly up with a road half done, and there wasn't enough money, and so I think what this says is that the work yet to be done is 94,000 plus 9,000,
Yep.
which is 103,000.
Yeah.
The 20% rule says we don't go below 20% of the construction cost. So the numbers are the 143 plus the 279.
Right.
Those, we can't go lower than the 20% at this point.
So I think I remember the same thing, that we can reduce the bond to reflect work that's been completed, but not less than 20% of the original estimate.
Right.
Right. What did I just think of?
When I did the quick math, I divide, you know, 103,000, divided by 422,000, which came out to 24%.
But I don't under,
Your 24% is
two
based on
279
It's the
and
total, it's the totals for Graves' estimate divided by the 100% cost estimate. So it's the,
Graves says the 279,000 is 20% of the 100% cost on that part.
right, well, yeah,
And
this
the-
is broken up into two sections,
And
so it's a
then
little
they
confusing.
say that 143,000 is 20% of the total for the other part.
So I think where the confusion,
No.
Fiona, at least from my read of it, is at least for section 1, just use that as an example. 100% cost is 1.39 million.
Mhm.
So that 20% is 279,000 rounded.
Right.
So
That's what needs to be maintained.
yep, I think your math was if we count the 20% cost as as the 100%.
Mhm.
Then the reduced construction, that made 24% of that. So I think we need to do the 20% in section 1 plus 20% in section 2
Okay.
as our amount.
And what the Graves report shows is that the work remaining is more than completely covered by the 20% that we would retain.
Correct.
So we would be reducing the bond down to that 20% of the 100% cost estimate.
Mhm.
And that's the floor. We can't reduce the bond below that.
Yep. So
But Graves shows us that that 20% is more than enough to ensure completion of the project.
So given Graves rounding, I'm going to motion that we approve a bond reduction to $422,000.
Second.
Justin, can you repeat your last statement? What did you say?
I'm moving that we reduce approve a bond reduction to a total of $422,000.
Okay.
How much?
422,000.
And it was seconded.
Yes.
Moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
I vote aye, and Mr. Hassner.
I vote aye.
Okay.
So, motion carries. That's done. Now, tell us about 274 Providence Road.
Sure. Still reeling from the math. Okay. 274 Providence Road. This is a follow-up to I believe it was our last meeting. We had 274 was looking for an endorsement of their as-built plan by the board. At the time, they did not have the abrevieties installed on their plan. They have since done that. They've installed them here. I did drive to the site myself and confirm. They also did provide a photo. So these are from the approved landscaping plan and will eventually grow over time to create additional buffering as requested. If the board remembers, the issue was, I'm sorry, I'm looking for the wrong thing. The issue was we wanted to create, these decks here. You can see into the Grafton Housing Associates property here. So any additional buffering that can be provided is appreciated, and this had been requested by Green Acres earlier in the year. And that's basically where we landed, and this is satisfactory to the planning department. But happy to talk further and hear from the board about their thoughts.
Yeah, my notes on this say that we discussed this at our June 26th meeting.
Yes, thank you.
That the Graves review indicated that there were no outstanding issues regarding the completeness. And that the only thing that was brought up there was the question of the arborvitae's, which has now been resolved.
Yes.
So I will move that the board endorse this definitive plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
It's the as-built plan.
As-built plan, thank you, sorry.
We've already endorsed it.
Yes,
There was no definitive plan for this project.
Correct. I misspoke, but that's what I meant.
My head hurts. I think it's been moved and seconded.
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
I vote aye, and Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
And it looks like we do have that plan on the table to sign after our meeting tonight.
Yes, I took advantage of all four of you coming in and brought it. Okay.
All right. That brings us to Stillwater.
Another bond reduction.
Yes. But, Fiona.
Yes. So, we have been advised by council to not, do this today. We should consider, moving the discussion to the next board meeting. We just found out today that there is a litigation, relating to the bond. And the council has not had time to properly prepare. So, we just should, continue that until we get more information, and council can provide her recommendations. One thing that I will say about this is there has been issues with stormwater on Wheeler Road, which I know has been an issue for a while. However, there is a condition in the definitive plan decision to address this. And this should be a top priority for the board to consider when considering reducing the bond. A letter was written by the DPW back in 2020 requesting a catch basin be placed on Wheeler Road to try and help with some of the stormwater issues. So the planning department would recommend to the board to require that be done. I mean, after speaking with Graves Engineering about this and considering the potential bond reduction request, there would be enough in the 20% coverage to cover the apologize, it's late, to cover the catch basin. However, it's still something that should be a priority as the DPW has brought this to my attention.
The Graves cost sheet doesn't include, in the actual cost column, doesn't include the catch basin, does it?
There are line items. I mean, again, we we're not going to be voting on this tonight, but I will share.
Well, I'm not worried about it. I just want to be sure that they include that in the in the numbers that we're using.
I will say I see catch basin, a few line items for catch basins in the, but there is nothing. It's listed as zero to do.
Yeah.
So it's reflected as if it's already done.
Yeah, I think that may be catch basins more within the subdivision road.
Yeah.
This is on Wheeler Road, isn't it?
Right, it's an off-site improvement, but it was something that was written into the original decision. The plan does not reflect the catch basin from what
and therefore Graves doesn't necessarily know to include it. So get Graves to include it.
Yep.
It's probably true. There's $100,000, roughly $98,000 of room there And it probably won't cost that, but it's probably not gonna be as cheap as cleaning a couple of catch basins or whatever. Getting any bond reduction will, hopefully encourage
Some,
getting built.
so would you like a motion to pass this over, or would we just chair's discretion?
The chair will say, we'll take this up again in the next agenda, okay?
If we take no action tonight, then it's at the discretion of the chair to include it on a future agenda.
Yes, I don't see any action being taken, so
No action. is
please do so.
Okay.
That's like when you adjourn because you lose quorum, right?
Yes.
We had that with a Zoom. Okay, all right, that was the bond reduction. Bills, did we have any bills? I don't think so.
Nope.
Previous meeting minutes?
None.
No. Staff report?
So, just covering some, we're obviously busy and we're trying to keep people as updated as possible, but in terms of new information, we have a meeting with, as a follow-up to our cable advisory committee meeting for the Wi-Fi hotspot installation. We are meeting with gentleman from the original company that
Brian Hopkins.
Thank you. Yeah, Brian Hopkins. We'll be meeting with him to discuss next steps, following up on the recommendations that we heard at that meeting. So we are looking forward to that. That is slated for August 3rd. So I will provide an update once I'm able to meet with them and have a little bit more clarity. John Allen, our economic development coordinator, has been helping me move this project along. So he will also be joining me at that meeting.
And I'm on that meeting.
Yes, and Bob will also be there.
Yes, and I've said hi to Brian, and he was civil. We spent a lot of time on F-man, and I can't convince the cable committee outgoing chairman, how to spell F-man. It's 4 letters, 4 capital letters. Fiber Municipal Area Network.
That's what I remember it standing for.
Yes, and that was Brian's idea. Okay, is that all the staff?
I'll just fly through, excuse me, some of these. I'm still working with the procurement officer, and trying to get some clarity from the state regarding, 30B, the procurement law, for RFQ responses. So that is, those are under review, and we're hoping to get consensus as soon as possible. I have been, we have our parcel, open space and recreation plan parcel prioritization project kickoff. It's a lot of P's. With CMRPC, we are trying to nail down a date in late August to meet with the open space and recreation committee as well as the town administrator to start that. This is a project that we pursued through DLTA funding with CMRPC and is quite important and a priority, honestly, in the eyes of a lot of boards and commissions in town. So we're excited, and this project is handy because it actually addresses a lot of implementation items in our open space and rec plan. So we're excited to get that started, and once we finalize a date, I will update the board. Dave has been helping out very much with that, and
trying to get all my committee members to tell me what dates work for them.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, it's well, hopefully we'll be able to finalize day soon. So I had a kickoff, not kickoff, but I guess maybe just a preliminary meeting with the Eugene Bernay. He is at Fisherville. We decided to enter into a grant application to repair the dam there, and we got it for $187,000. So the town was providing match funds in terms of staff hours in kind, and Eugene is conducting all of the engineering work, etc., which a large portion of that has been done. But as many know, and maybe I had learned that dam is in a serious state of disrepair and is a hazard. So it's been flagged by the state as a problem, and it's, we're doing whatever we can to help catalyze investment in that area. So we're excited about that.
If I'm remembering correctly, that was one of the recommendations that was never completed out of the 2001 master plan.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Exactly. So yeah, it's exciting. These, we're happy to help, where we can. And in terms of staff time required for this, it's quarterly reports and, submitting of proof of payment. So it's a really relatively light lift. I would like to bring to the board's attention, as we continue to think through this. This is not a hearing before us, but the tree barn located at 17 Upton Street and the preservation of that barn. So the RFP, when it was submitted, when it was put out on the street, it references the barn as being historic. When GSX responded, they did say in their response that they would be, which is public record, on the planning website, that they would examine options to repurpose the barn into a brewery or something of that nature. The barn technically is not listed as historic in the National Register or on Macris from what I could see, but there's been concerted efforts to preserve the barn. So I am looking, I'm trying to coordinate with the chair of the CPC, who has been, and also is chair, I believe he's the chair of the Historic District Commission and is involved in the Historic Commission as well, and getting on the horn with Mr. Grant to talk through options to preserve the barn. I mean, the board, when and if this comes before the board will be able to have discretion in terms of the special permit granting criteria for the barn, but it's just something to be aware of, that, desire to preserve the barn has been brought to my attention and is it a priority. And as I know that John Grant from GSX was before us and did present two concepts, but I know that there was a lot of discussion around knocking it and making it a parking lot, but I think that this warrants a lot more discussion. Yes. It's not technically in the historic district, but there's still value to it.
It gets one mention in the Macris documentation.
Oh, you did find a mention in Macris.
It is mentioned in the list of in the Grafton Common Historic District area.
Yep.
It is mentioned as one of the structures that's near the historic district.
Oh, okay.
But that's it. It doesn't have its own page. It doesn't have its own picture or documentation or anything.
Right.
It just gets a throwaway mention, like, yeah, this is one of the buildings that's in the Grafton Common Historic area, but not technically within the district itself.
Okay. We're gonna need a motion to continue beyond 10 unless we move rather quickly.
The last update that I will provide is looking to coordinate with the building department and the zoning enforcement officer about town meeting zoning changes. And we have, I've been obviously keeping a record of things, but namely, as we know, outdoor dining has continued to come up, so we're considering that for fall town meeting. A shed bylaw is something that has been brought to my attention as much needed for a while, so meeting with ZBA administrator and Mr. Berger to talk through what that may look like. So amongst a few other minor things, some catering and doing some research about incorporating catering into Appendix A, incorporating the marijuana definitions that were returned to us by the AG's office, and obviously the work that we have going on with 5 Millennium and our MBTA community zoning. So that I will have a better update for the board next time, and hopefully draft that we can start.
Time is getting short for that.
Yes. Yep.
We should be pretty well prepared by the end of August with what we want to bring in October.
Did you mention the kickoff of the master plan?
Oh, I did not. I will. We did have our first master plan working group meeting on the 17th. It went very well. We talked through roles, responsibilities, open meeting law, conflict of interest training, all of that kind of basic stuff. I am continuing to track, folks who are getting sworn in and taking their trainings. Same RPC presented, and we are meeting again on August 7th, where we'll be talking through the vision statement and planning for our next workshop.
Yeah, I was in another meeting, but I got a chance to look in towards the end, and I was pretty pleased with what was being said about what they're going to look at and the scope and all that stuff. If there's no more staff report, we have a couple minutes correspondence. I've been back and forth asking for this, and if you read the most recent version of the correspondence, we've turned up the fact that quite some time ago, back in January, the appeal on the project up at Wyman Gordon was dismissed, and no one bothered to tell us as named parties that it had been, so I'm pleased about that. Is there anything else?
Nothing else in correspondence caught my eye.
Okay, I don't think anything I don't think there's anything else can lawfully come before us.
I did want to, something I intended to mention
reports
during
from
the discussion
representatives
of
of
124
CMRPC.
Westboro. There was one point I forgot to mention during the discussion on 124 Westboro. It's just an observation, but it appears that the Village at Institute Road subdivision has been renamed to Woodland Hill, not to be confused with the Woodland Hills plural subdivision that this board approved back in 1991.
There ought to be
that your father-in-law lives in.
There ought to be a problem about that. I know that we have concerns with street names, for example, and so that may be.
Okay.
Yeah. If you don't have it handy, I have a list of all the subdivisions names that have ever been used in Grafton.
I believe we do, but I'm gonna ask you for your list anyway and confirm that it's as complete as possible.
Anyway,
Is there any other business?
I move that we adjourn.
Second. Moved and second. It's not debatable.
Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye. We're on to here with a whole minute and a half to go.
Hey.